All right, welcome back to another episode of Your Platform podcast. Not only do I have a pretty good friend here of mine from early or late '90s, I also have an avid listener to the show, which I appreciate the
Definitely, man.
support, man.
Yeah.
I think when I started the show, you kind of you were one of the people that knew that I was doing it,
Yeah.
and I had asked you. We were back at the Cigar Lounge in February. I said, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. Are you interested?" You said, "Yeah." So
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on. I guess Geoff Smith with Remax on the Bay,
Thank you.
out of Niantic, Connecticut, and not only is he a great realtor what he does, but he's a father of three. Husband, and you give back to the community. Community that you grew up in London, Connecticut, a lot of the communities that are around. And I think not, speaking for probably a lot of people, we all appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you.
But let's get right into this content, Geoff. I've known you for, like I said, over 2 decades.
Yeah.
And when you jumped into the industry, was 2016. You were transitioning from the restaurant industry.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, you spent a long time in the restaurant industry.
I did. Yeah.
And I think the turnover rate for the industry is about 70% of that.
Yeah.
One, how can you stay in the industry with such volatility like that? And why did you transition into real estate?
Yeah. Two good questions. My first restaurant job ever was Lighthouse Inn, actually,
Oh, okay.
in London. Yeah. Back in when I graduated high school, I went to UConn Avery Point, and so lived off campus and started just working full time while I was in school to try to pay my way through and also pay for my cost of living and everything too. And I loved that job a lot, but unfortunately it closed. And then I was left for months, looking for something. And I was trying to be picky about, I didn't know if I want to stay in the restaurant industry or what direction I was going to go. I might've fallen into that 70%, at that time. And a good friend of mine actually got me an interview at Michael Jordan's at the Sport Cafe. They have two, the steakhouse, Michael Jordan Steakhouse and Sport Cafe in the Mohegan Sun Casino. And at the time, and still, I would say probably to this day, even though I'm out of the industry now, that felt like getting a job there was like the peak for that kind of work. And
it feels like it working, because I worked at the hotel too.
Yeah,
it feels like that like that's the kind of want to work there.
Yeah, that restaurant. I mean, it was so. Yeah, I mean, without getting too deep into, I was there for 11 years and worked my way all through between hosting, busing, food runner, server, and then ultimately it landed at bartender, which is what my goal kind of always was, to get behind the bar. And that was one of the hardest places to get into, because a lot of the bartenders there had been there, so a couple since that when I was there from day one, they had already been there for 11 years. And a lot of the servers there too, even some that are still there to this day, have been there since the first opening day. And so I think that just speaks a lot to the culture that they created there. And I think they probably defy the statistic because not only do a lot of people stay working in the industry that work there, but they literally do stay there in that restaurant. And it was a hard job to leave, even though, I started to transition into real estate in 2016. I've always had an interest in it. I bought my first house in 2011, and I loved the restaurant industry and still do. And there's a lot of things I miss about it, but I reached a point on a personal level where I just felt like I had pretty much learned everything that I felt like I was going to learn, besides maybe some new drink recipes and stuff. But like, it was customer service job. It was great networking and making relationships with people, but I just felt like I was missing some fulfillment. Like there was something missing. And I started to get to the conclusion that whatever I was looking for, I didn't think I could find, in that industry anymore.
What do you miss most about it?
I miss aside from the people I work with, I do miss just the flow. Like it was a job. Like I'm a type of person where I have to always be doing something. I don't like standing around at work or sitting around at work. I have to kind of be on the move. And especially working behind the bar, there's always something to pick up and do, always something to clean up, always something to set up, always someone to talk to. And I really liked that part of it. It was very fast paced. And I realized unknowingly at the time, when I was looking at what I wanted to transition into, that I also got addicted to the, tip based pay, commission based pay. And that kind of was something that was fueling me too.
When did you realize that part?
probably a couple of years into it when I really started to make, like I said, I started out as a host, and that was more of an hourly rate. And then when I started to bus tables, I realized, some nights you can walk out of there with hundreds of dollars in your pocket. And it was like, oh, okay. So the more I work, the more I make. I like that, and I started to get addicted to that kind of that setup.
There's a little bit of a challenge though, right? I think the host is probably the hardest job, right? Early on, would you say, or busing?
Host, yeah, I would say they're the ones in the trenches, because you're the first interaction with the guest that's coming in, and especially at that restaurant, very high profile restaurant, very busy, very reservations booked out every night. If there's an empty table, it's going to get filled, so they deal with a lot at the host stand, and they don't get as much reward, necessarily monetarily as the rest of the staff. But
going through that, how did you navigate through that? Or just something that did you have the end goal of getting to the bartending?
Yeah. When I first interviewed, my goal was to be a busser. That was what I had done at Lighthouse Inn, and I felt like going back to host was kind of a step away from where I wanted to be going. But I talked to the GM in the interview and said, "This is my goal, and I'm happy to take this job, and I'll put my all into it. But as soon as the position opens, like, I want my name in the hat." And so that ended up coming true.
Where's that work ethic come from?
That's a good question. I don't know. Even when, I think when I was a kid, if there was something I wanted, I would obsess over it until I got it. And I think I give my parents a lot of credit for making me earn what I got.
Yeah, for sure.
It wouldn't just, you want a bike, here's a bike. It was more like, you want a bike, go rake some leaves, go, mow some lawns, and
shovel some snow.
Yeah. I think that was more like, there's an obsessive side of my personality that drove me to start working. And then like I said, I realized that I got a lot of fulfillment from getting things accomplished.
Sure.
And so even if it's a small thing, like, making the bed, that type of stuff, it does.
You make it every day?
I try. Yeah. My wife, I can't discount her. She makes it a lot of the time too. But no, it's, little things like that as an example. I think, you can find fulfillment in those small mundane tasks as much as you can big things.
Right. That's like I've been talking about it a lot on my show, is the, Atomic Habits, James Clear, the tiny little incremental improvements that lead to big results.
Yeah.
Who were some of the guests that you had that were notable guests at the restaurant that you served?
Besides Michael himself?
Did you?
How was
that? What was that experience like?
Incredible. Yeah. I mean, he was one of the few that I was real starstruck by. We saw a lot of celebrities in there. Robin Williams was one that always resonated with me. He was one of the nicest guys I ever met.
That's cool.
But anyways, Michael Jordan was actually a unique night because it was the night he got inducted to the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. So they shut the whole restaurant down. It was him, all his friends and family, Scottie Pippen, Ahmad Rashad, Spike Lee. I mean, everybody.
Wow.
They were all there. They came down from Springfield after he got inducted to the Hall of Fame and through the.
What year was that?
The party there. That would have been 2009 or 10.
Wow.
And so I had only started working there maybe a year prior, and I'm like, this is what this is like. Okay, cool.
So that probably I want to be around this. I want to be around these people.
Yeah, it was cool, and he was in a great mood that night, and so it was one of those nights where it was like, this I could get used to this, this job.
Yeah. How many times did you run into him? Is that the only time?
That was the only time personally. He had, I probably missed him maybe 2 or 3 other times that he'd come down for different events. They own. The company that he partnered with owns 3 restaurants in the casino with his name on it. So there was different reasons why he might be there. But yeah.
Talk to me about the skills that you developed there and how that transitions into real estate.
Yeah. So, from the customer service aspect, obviously, one of the things I learned the most there, one of the servers actually, when I first started training, was like, it's a real simple job.
Yeah.
Get people what they need, take away what they don't. Mm-hmm. And it was like little things like that I heard always resonated with me. And the another one too was people will come in for the first time for the food, but they'll come back for the service. Mm-hmm. So if you can create an atmosphere or experience for them that makes them want to come back, they can get good food anywhere.
Right.
It's hard to pair that up with a good overall experience. Yeah. So those types of skills, I think, definitely transitioned into real estate for me. And I had some good mentors. I had specifically 2 people behind the bar that really took me under their wing and taught me everything they knew about even just talking to people and letting conversations flow. I think taking yourself out of the conversation, not making it about you. People usually when they come in there, especially if they're sitting by themselves or something,
Sure.
they want to talk about themselves.
Yeah, of course.
So you got to give people the space to do
Yeah.
that, but still engage with them. And people like also hearing,
Yeah.
some people like hearing your own personal stories. And
How
things
much
like
practice did you do with that? Like, is it practice on the job, or did you go home
Yeah.
and like stand in the mirror?
No, I was in the field. It was in the field. It was, it wasn't a lot of, I mean, I talked to myself a lot, but
Yeah,
it wasn't a lot of that. It was more, just kind of like, try to understand people's personalities, I think. And I
Sure.
learned so much in that job that I can't even quantify as far as understanding people, how they think, how they tick. I mean, just the dynamic alone of being behind the bar and having one person there. It's a casino.
Sure.
You got one person there who just lost their shirt, and you got another person who just paid their mortgage off, and you're trying to have two conversations with both people at the same time. Little things like that. It was like it kind of it forced you in a position where you have to you turn into therapist, best friend, mediator, whatever it is. If
Sure.
So
can you share a time that made you uncomfortable? Being behind the bar.
Yeah,
or just in general there.
Yeah. I mean, there was a couple times, I guess, being behind the bar, that the ones that made me the most uncomfortable probably were people that were, needed to be cut off.
Yeah.
And that's a tough one because you don't know where they're coming from. There's so many bars there. The day's long because there's no windows there. People could get stuck there and they don't even know what time it is sometimes. And also, like I said, there's a lot of vices, that are in that place. And so there were some moments, some late nights probably where, you get into a weird territory with somebody and fortunately we had good management. And if I had to go behind the scenes and be like, hey, we do something about this. But, there was a couple times where, people get threatening and get in your face.
Really?
Yeah.
For what?
Being mad about being cut off, that's one, or just being mad that, the food didn't arrive on time or whatever, tensions run high there. It really, I had sometimes people get mad that the seat they want to sit in isn't open because they're superstitious. And they're like, if I don't sit in this seat and I'm going to lose my money, like, and it's everybody's fault, but the odds, but
that's great. And I love that. One, I feel like you built upon the skills that you've learned. I think having a mentor is super valuable, which we'll touch more about later on in the show. But being able to channel those customer service skills, service first, everything that we do, service first. Which brings me to the next piece. What you guys as realtors are going through now and having to experience, with the commission changes. You have the settlement that's basically saying that the sellers do not have the obligation to pay a 6% or a commission to the buyer, the proposing buyer, or the buyer's agent. How do you feel about that one?
Yeah, I mean, so the hardest thing that I've found, especially recently with all the news coming out about this, is fighting some of the headlines that have come out that I feel like are delivering the wrong message. Even kind of like the way you're describing it, where they now have the option to negotiate. They always did, so I think a lot of the problem was there were some agents that weren't being fully transparent and disclosing all the options to their sellers. And obviously that's not, you're not working in your client's best interest if you're not giving them all the options. So, I think, my initial reaction was kind of excited about it, honestly, because which probably sounds, opposite of maybe what you'd expect, but I think it's going to hold people more accountable, which I think is good for the industry.
For sure.
And like I said, I think, in Connecticut, but also just in, hyper local in my office, we've always been, fully transparent and try to disclose people. Like if I'm having somebody sign a contract to list their home, I try to explain it to them as much detail as I would want to explain to me, and so I think when we go through that process, people start to understand and they realize, okay, one of the quotes that resonated with me that there was a CEO of another real estate brokerage that said was, the best thing we can do is showcase the complexity, but deliver simplicity. And I think that's a really good way to kind of explain to a client, there's a lot that goes on here, and here's how easy I can make it for you, and here, by doing my job, you're not going to have to worry about all this stuff. Let me do that, for you.
When I bought my house, and I think that there's a little bit of sales tactics that might have gotten lost, and this is me asking you from an education standpoint, because there is a assume the sale mindset, right? That's a closing tactic. You're going to assume, hey, Geoff, your insurance premium is $2,000 a year on the auto. $2,000 on the home. I have this already set up to close on May 1st. How's that sound? That's an assumptive close, right?
Yep.
And when I bought my house, I feel like uh, the first one particularly, where it was like, yeah, it's 2.5%. Sorry, actually, the first one that I sold, I should say, not the first one that I bought.
Mm-hmm.
The first one that I sold was, yeah, it's 2.5%, and or no, my rate's 6%, but I'll do a 5 for you because this, and I don't know if that's the same approach. If it's the same approach of the assumptive close, or if that's just the practice? Is that the issue that they're trying to address, or
I think what they were trying to do is encourage full disclosure and,
Sure.
and decouple. They call it decouple the commissions,
Right,
where
right.
basically the seller shouldn't feel as if all of the weight has to fall on them,
Yeah.
and then they have to offer it to somebody else. Their argument, I think, was why the buyer should be able to pay their own representative.
Right.
Why am I paying someone who's technically negotiating against me?
Right.
That's one way to look at it.
Yeah.
I think the other way to look at it is it's called a co-broke.
Mhm.
You're paying someone else to bring their client to your home
Right.
and guide that client to the
Right.
closing table. We're all on the same boat, really.
Right,
Trying
right.
to get to the closing.
Right.
Even though there's times where we might butt heads
Yeah.
or have disagreements about
Mhm.
the specifics or
Sure.
the numbers behind it, we're all trying to accomplish the same goal. They're trying to buy, you're trying to sell.
Right.
And I think, especially right now for buyers, this is not going to benefit them.
Yeah.
To ask them to come out of pocket to pay their own representative on top of all the other expenses that they have, higher interest rates than they
Right.
were a couple of years ago, higher prices, for sales of homes because of appreciation.
Right.
It's a lot to ask. So I think it makes more sense personally. And this is how I would explain it to a seller client too,
Right.
to pay that on behalf of the buyer and build it into the list price of the home.
Correct.
We know what your closing expenses
Right.
will be. It's a courtesy and a benefit to the buyer, and I think would attract them to your home, knowing they don't have to pay their own representative. And it just makes the most sense to me to keep it that way.
How do you think it
that way?
How do you think it impacts the buyer's agents and the seller's agents?
I think it puts, we kind of have to relearn our own delivery of this message a little bit. Like I said, even though, personally, I feel like I've always been explaining it the way that I'm going to continue to explain it. I have to
Right.
get a little more specific maybe
Right.
about the details behind it. And again, explain in more depth the options, because I do think it's important for everyone to know what the options are and then make their own decision. I mean, that really is, I think sometimes when agents get tripped up or make a mistake is when they start to insert their own opinion into the
Sure.
situation. And if it's asked for,
Yeah.
you should insert it,
For sure.
but you don't want that to override what your clients are trying to accomplish. They're the ones that should be driving the ship. You're just trying to help them, advise them through that process.
Right. Is there a specific type of value that you think that buyer's agents and seller's agents could bring to this impending change, that's coming up here in July?
I think, again, back to kind of, I think explaining more to the consumer, bringing them back into the fold about exactly how things go behind the scenes is going to be helpful. But I think really for buyer's agents specifically, who I think could possibly be affected by this the most, I think it's important for them to relook at how they view their role in the transaction. And I think, especially lately, the first argument I've seen is, well, do we even need buyer's agents? I mean, Zillow, you could find a house online yourself. I know what I'm looking for. I'll just search it.
Right.
That's one piece of the puzzle that definitely technology has made easier for the
Yeah.
consumer. But you still need someone to give you advice along the way about,
Right.
what comes next
Right.
after you find the house. How do
Yeah.
you secure it? And then how do you work through inspections, appraisal, financing opportunities, and
Yeah.
things like that. And then even after they close on the house, you're still there as that person.
Yeah.
Just because you've got your check doesn't mean you should disappear.
I've heard some radical theories. These are just opinions of what could happen. You think about the car industry, right? We historically would always go to the dealership. We would do the paperwork, we'd buy the car, but then you have the evolution of Carvana and things like that, right?
Right.
Where customer can literally go on and pick the car they want, buy it, boom, and it shows up at your house.
Right.
Do you think technology, or how do you think technology could wrap itself into that kind of model with real estate at all? Do you think that's something that could happen?
I think personally, and again, I'm biased because I work in the
Sure,
industry, but
sure.
in my gut, I think consumers are still going to find value in hiring a
Yeah.
representative to guide them through.
And I guess, and I didn't mean to interrupt
No,
you,
yeah,
but I guess I think of it from the standpoint of the generations of people that are buying, right?
yeah,
I think our generation value that person, but
hmm
I think the generations behind us and probably even our kids, which hopefully we teach them the value of speaking with someone individually. But I think technology in itself is making things super easy for people.
definitely.
I see it in the insurance world. I see where, and it almost kind of seems like by design, but you can go and call me up for a quote with a specific carrier and I could give you X rate. And you're like, okay, I'm just going to continue to do my shopping. But if you go to the direct website for that same exact carrier,
Right.
you're going to have a rate that's probably 20%, 30% better, one,
hmm
and two, a lesser down payment than it would be if you bought it from me. So that type of technology is I think is going to continue to bleed into my industry. So I'm curious, and that's what I meant more about.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. I think, it's definitely, I think it's making, again, consumers having more access to information is so important.
Sure.
There's a good book actually called Zillow Talk about the
Mhm.
start of Zillow and why the founders even decided to create this website. One of the things I think is so cool about that is their whole goal was to pull up the curtain. Agents used to have this listing book that would come out every week. And if you wanted to see what was available, you'd have to hire a realtor and they'd show you the listings that were available.
Right.
They were like, we should do away with this. It should be public information. People should be able to log into a website and see what's on the website without having to have a license to do that or
Right.
hire someone with a license to do
Right.
that. That type of transition, I think, was super important for our industry because the more the consumers know, the more informed they are, the better decisions they're going to make. Right. And
Right.
so then I think the way our role has shifted is, like I said, you become, especially on the buying side, you become less of a salesman and more of an advisor.
Correct.
And so now that the consumer has access to all this information, how do you help them process it?
Yeah.
Because, even on the selling side right now, aside from this whole commission, settlement, you've always been able to list your house on your own if you want.
Right.
Zillow
Right.
gives you the opportunity to do that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you could. I mean, you could list your home without using a realtor if you want to.
Yeah.
There's for sale by owner,
Yeah.
they call it.
Yeah. So I knew that. I didn't realize you can. It's that easy to do. Like you can just.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is,
There's a lot of stuff that goes into.
are you marketing it well?
Yeah.
Is that one website enough to get
Right.
you in front of as many eyes?
Yeah.
For us, like if we listed on the MLS, we're also going on the MLS, we're going on Zillow, we're going on Realtor, we're going on 50 plus different websites,
Right.
and so the more eyes you get in front of the better, newspaper advertising, even still everything,
How are consumers reacting to this information that has been available, or it's like you said, it's always been a negotiable, but now it's been publicized, it's in the media. Are you seeing a reaction to it? Is this something that now realtors are addressing, like, hey, this is what's going on? And from what I've heard, Connecticut's kind of been um, good with it.
ahead of the curve.
Yeah,
I think.
ahead of it.
Yeah, definitely.
But is this something that buyers or consumers are asking?
Yeah, definitely getting a lot of questions about it. Like that first weekend after the settlement, in a couple of, like I think it was maybe Washington Post and CNN came out with a couple of articles about it right off the bat, and I had family members, clients texting me, links and saying,
Right.
what does this mean for you? And
Right.
so I actually, again, I welcome that because I like talking about my industry, and I like being challenged sometimes about it too. But I think, I definitely got a lot of questions when I sit down with clients now. Like I said, it's definitely a much longer conversation than it was, just because there's more nuance involved based on what's going on and what's in the headlines.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, I think most of it's me kind of fighting what I think is the wrong narrative about how it was or how it's going to become. But yeah, in general, definitely getting a lot of questions about it. It hasn't, it hasn't affected me monetarily yet. I think, again, I can still advocate for the value I provide and the commission I'd like to receive for that.
Yeah. What's that value, Geoff? What's that value provide?
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, being kind of like when I was working in the restaurant industry, you wear a lot of hats as a realtor.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, you are a salesman, especially when you're listing a house. You're a salesman. You're a therapist. A lot of people that are selling property are going through something in their life. Sometimes that is part of why they're selling the property.
Right.
So you have to be there for people in a lot of different ways, coordinating things. We're brokers by definition, so brokers, bringing people together. You have to keep everything on track, keep timelines on track, make sure that it's different on the buying and selling side in terms of what your value is. I think again, specific to the selling side, it's more the marketing piece, all that.
So my interpretation from what you just said is that you're transparent.
Yeah.
you communicate,
Yeah.
and you're organized,
Yeah.
and you're empathetic.
Yeah.
Is what, again, I think that's huge to have. So,
No, I appreciate that. Yeah.
let's transition to work-life balance. Right, COVID made things super easy.
Yeah.
To I, I have a different opinion about the work from home. While I do it, I'm not as productive as being like in an office.
100%.
But it changed. It changed things in a good way too. Like, I had my son during COVID. He was born literally during the pandemic. Like, they took our temperature. They did not let us leave the room. Everybody was afraid of what was happening. It was
Mm-hmm.
literally a month into all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thankful. I'm kind of thankful in that sense that I've had the opportunity to be with him and raise him, and for almost 2 years stay at home. Obviously he went to daycare and stuff, but stay at home with him. But
Yeah.
um, how has your mindset shifted about the work-life balance? Before COVID and now after COVID. Because again, for me, I'm indifferent. Like, I value being in an office, but I also can see the benefits of work from home. How's that shifted for you?
Yeah. I mean, so when COVID hit, I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old,
Yeah, right,
both
right.
my daughters at the
Yeah.
time. At this now, speeding up now, I have almost 7, almost 5, and
Jeez,
2.5.
man, that's crazy.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think that much time's passed since COVID
4 years,
started.
man. 4
It's
years.
wild. But anyways, yeah, at the time, my mindset, I think, was pretty much fully focused on real estate. Even before, when I got into real estate, when my first daughter was born in 2017 was
Yeah.
really the year I started to really start. I started in 2016, but really didn't start to have sales till 2017.
Yeah.
And still, even when she was really young, I was such locked into the mindset of like 2x every year, 2x. I got to do more than I did last year. I got to do more than I did last year. Once COVID hit, it was a weird shift, I think, that happened. Looking back now with my mentality, where even since then, 2020, the market got really busy. So
Yeah.
all the kids are home, everybody's stuck home except me. I'm
Right.
still an essential employee,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm on the road, and I'm
Right.
bouncing back and forth,
Right.
and
What's-
masked up everywhere and everything. So
What's going on through your mind during that?
at first I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
when I saw kind of
The
it was,
opportunity, right?
it was craziness
Yeah.
about people just relocating, buying second homes,
Yeah.
changing their primary residence, people finding out they can work
Yeah.
remotely. I mean, it went nuts.
Yeah.
And especially our area, combine that with the perfect storm of EB starting to hire more
Right,
people.
right.
You've got so much development going on around here to bring people into the area.
Yeah.
Industry's growing.
Yeah.
All that kind of happened at once. So I was definitely very, very busy at that time. And but yeah, I mean, mentally, that was when I almost wanted to pull back a little more. I
Right,
wanted to
right.
be with the kids more.
Right, right.
I wanted to, and,
Yeah.
and so it started to put things in perspective. I think the best way that I learned how to handle that is, I think, to your point earlier, I'm not good at working from home either.
Yeah.
I'm half a dad and I'm half a realtor,
Right.
and that doesn't make me great at either.
100%.
It's so
100%.
that's really, I want to be able to do that,
Sure.
and I can multitask to an extent, but
Yeah.
it doesn't make me really great
You're
at it.
not
either.
as effective, and you just mentioned, you got to do the 2x. You got to do 2x. Doing that at home, you can't.
You can't.
You're just not as productive.
Something's falling by the wayside.
Something's,
Yeah.
Where's that come from? I love that. I got a 2x. I got a 2x. I got a 2x, and here you are today, successful. Where's that stem from? Because I think people have, and I'll speak for myself because I never like to speak for people, but I'll speak for myself. Like, I come up with, I got to do 2x. I got to do this. I got to do that. I always come up short. I feel like I come up short. Like, how do you channel that and execute?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's been years. Last year, for example, was one of the first years in a while that I came up short.
Yeah,
of that. So it hasn't always been 2x every year.
Sure.
And I think some of that was consciously almost.
right.
And again, not that I stopped taking phone calls or anything.
Yeah.
But I maybe took my foot off the gas a little bit
Right,
as far
right.
as prospecting and looking for business.
Sure.
I was still allowing it to come to me, which
Right,
I'm
right.
fortunate that it does.
Right.
But yeah, I think the mindset of that was like, I want to keep improving, and I
Right.
wanted every day. I wanted it to improve, and then on a micro level and on a macro level, every year,
Yeah.
I wanted to look back and see
Right,
that in real.
right.
Is
Is there anything that
stats.
you do? I'd like to ask this question. Is there anything that you do to get yourself into a mindset of like, I gotta execute on this? Whether it be working out, whether it be meditation. I like asking people to see what they do, because when I hear the same thing, there's a common theme. I feel like that's something that means something. So, is there anything that you do
like
specifically?
discipline wise?
Yeah, discipline wise. Yeah.
Yeah, I try to. I actually like. I'll set fake deadlines for myself sometimes where I'm like, I might not have to have this done by today, but I'm telling myself like this has to be done today. I do that all the time, even with little things. And the other thing I do is I tell my clients when to expect something from me, because I know I'm not going to like let them down.
Right.
I'll let myself down before I let somebody else down. Like I'm so focused on, not delivering on something that I said. So those two things I think help keep me pretty driven on a daily basis as far as like accomplishing things.
Sure.
But yeah, a lot of it depends on what I'm trying to accomplish and what that's going to lead to, and I think a lot of times, as realtors, there's no real finish line in our job. It's, even when someone closes on a property, you celebrate for a minute, but then you're right back to like, all right, there's other things going on too. So trying to, I think, take advantage of those moments and a little bit more and celebrate a little bit more, even with myself. Sometimes it helps, but it's the discipline thing is a never ending.
It's never ending. And I'm finding, I think discipline and consistency go hand in hand.
Yeah.
The more you're consistent at something, the more disciplined you're going to be to do it. And I'm finding that with my show. I said this to Colin Potter when we talked about it, and I've been understanding, for the first time in my life, what pushing past uncomfort or discomfort and pushing past that comfort, and it's allowing me to be consistent in the show. Going back to the work-life balance, what kind of strategies do you have, or what are some things that you put in place for yourself to be Geoff Smith, the realtor, and be dad at home and separate? Because the one thing I know in this industry is your phone's ringing, my phone's ringing at all the time. It's dinner table, and it's and this happened a lot during COVID when people were buying cars, which I don't really understand how people were buying cars or why they were buying cars. No one was driving at that time.
Right.
But my phone was ringing a lot, and we'd be at the dinner table, and it's say more like 6 months into it because we had my son. But it's like, how do we separate from that? What are things that you try to make sure that you do to disconnect from real estate, or is it just an expectation you have with the family?
Yeah, it's more, I think both. I try to be honest with my family about what to expect from me, and also with my clients. Like when I meet somebody for the first time, and we're going to start working together, I try to explain, like, look, if you text me after 9:00 at night, I might get back to you. If I don't, I'll get back to you first thing in the morning. Unless it's real time sensitive, I do always have my phone on me. There's no way I can put it down, and my wife will be the first one to tell you that. It's hard for me to like put it on a table and walk away from it. But I'm also not, I try not to just endlessly be scrolling on it either. Like if I'm on it, it's because I got to do something with it. I do scroll, don't get me wrong, but I just try not to, I try to control that on my own a little bit. But yeah, I try to live in the moment. So when I'm with the kids, if there's something that we're doing, like a hands-on type of activity, I'm not on my phone. I don't want them to look back and see, picture that between me and them, so I try to really focus on that. And when I'm with my clients, vice versa, like I don't like taking like if I'm on a showing, someone's looking at a house, I'm not going to be like, hold on, and start taking calls. I try to like really be locked into that, because they need me there. They want me there. They don't want to feel like I'm just there physically and not mentally.
I shared this on my episode with Kelly Lucas. When we bought our first house, so the house I was just talking about that I sold, we bought our first house. We used a realtor who showed up to us. She was kind of like, she showed us the house. Good. Everything was great. We signed, the contract, ready to go through inspections. And when it came to the day of the inspection, she goes, "Hey, I'm going to be a little bit late." I'm like, "All right, cool." She's like, "I'm not feeling well." I'm like, "All right, great." So she pulls up. She's like, "I'm going to stay in my car." And then she texted me and said, "Hey, can you come outside real quick?" And I went out there, and she goes, "Is it okay if I leave? I have a house to show that's $750,000 in Stonington." And at that point, wife and I are like, okay, like we don't know, like we don't know what this process is like. So it's just, to that point, I think that's just valuable that, you can disconnect, but you also can say, hey, like there's certain important things, but you're never going to leave your client, in the dark, if you will.
Right. Yeah. And I think, even for the person that's on the other side of the phone, it's like, if they knew I was leaving somebody stranded to go see them, I would hope they'd be like, no, don't do that. We can do this later. And that's kind of the way I try to, I try to treat people the way that I would want to be treated. And usually that comes back to
Golden
you.
rule.
But it's true. And I think there's a lot to that. And at the beginning, like when you first get into real estate, you're just looking for work anywhere. You probably felt like that in insurance where you're like, I'm hungry for whatever's out there. To me, it only took, one relationship where somebody's personality just didn't line up with mine for me to start getting real picky about who I work with and making sure, because I do think that if you're like that, usually they're going to recommend you to people that are like-minded.
Correct.
And you end up surrounding yourself with people that are all kind of the same mindset.
Yeah.
That's exactly the business I've been able to grow. So fortunate.
That's a skill, man. You don't just do that. There's so many times in my career that I've been like, I don't want to say begging for the business, but almost not choosing my circle the right way. And that's a skill, because you feel like there's something else that you can do but people are people. They're rooted into their ways. And I'm not saying that people can't change, but in business, it's tough. I think it's tough.
Right. Sure. And if they're draining you, if you have someone you're working with that's just like emotionally and psychologically just draining on you, it spills into other parts of your life. And then, like I said, worst case scenario, they start recommending you to other people that they know that might also drain you. And it's like, it just could become an endless cycle. So
why is a career in real estate important to you?
It's, when I first bought my house in 2011, I had a great realtor, and that experience with her really resonated with me. And I think was part of the reason I always had an interest in real estate, but was part of the reason why I could see myself becoming a real estate broker based on that. But what I enjoy the most about it, and the fulfillment that I got out of it, kind of what I was talking about when I was at Michael Jordan's, wondering what else is there that I could do that would give me a good feeling. I think real estate plays such an important role in people's lives as far as, dictating the trajectory of their life. Everything, if you think about it, all your memories are based on the house you grew up in. That's your setting for a lot of your memories. All of your lifestyle, the friends you meet, the restaurants you go to, the entertainment, whatever you do, especially now having kids, the access to different opportunities I have to get them out, whether it's a science center or a park or a playground, whatever. It's all about where I live and what I have access to based on where I live. And I think seeing people able to achieve their goals of buying a house in a place that they always wanted to be, seeing things like that just gives me fulfillment. It's hard to put into words. That's what I enjoy the most about it. I think that keeps me going.
Is there anything specifically that you remember in your career that you felt like it filled your cup all the way? Or is it just each transaction is like you just mentioned right now that, helping people fulfill their dreams?
Yeah. I've had a bunch of them.
Kind of like when I think about what I asked you earlier about, have you ever met Michael Jordan? Like that was a moment, right?
Yeah.
Is there moments like that in real estate?
There have been. I think probably the ones that probably come to the forefront of my mind is like friends and family members that I've helped. My mother-in-law, actually, I helped her buy a house, and we were negotiating it while I was in the hospital at the with the birth of I think it was my second daughter at the time.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was. So, and that was like, that's a memory that sticks out to me, because I was able to give her the good news that she was in a bidding war, and that was when bidding wars had just kind of started. It was like 2019.
Yeah.
Or maybe not just started, but that was when they started to become pretty popular in this area.
I didn't realize that was a thing back then. Like the bidding wars
were going on pre-COVID. Yeah. COVID just exacerbated. We already had an inventory. The bidding war thing happens because there's such low inventory. There's just more buyers than sellers, and so you have multiple buyers interested in one property. They start bidding against each other. And that happened in 2019 when my daughter was born. I remember being in the hospital, and it's the day after. So, but we're still there.
You've slept all of 3 minutes.
On the most comfortable chair in the room
with the pillow.
But yeah, I remember giving her the call that she won the bidding war while we were there, and that was cool because I've got so many things to celebrate at one time, and it was important to her because it was bringing her closer to us.
Right.
Just that's one. Now that I'm talking about it, that's one that sticks on my mind. But really, a lot of friends and family, like I put a post together. I don't post enough online, but I put one together last year just because I was looking back on numbers, and it was since 2021, I think it was, almost 100 transactions, 87% were people that had either friends or family or someone that had been referred to me. Yeah. And there's only seven transactions out of 90 something that I did that was people that I hadn't met.
Wow.
Before real estate.
Huge.
And I was looking at stuff like that, and I'm like, man, I'm so fortunate, but
that's
like
crazy.
Yeah, wild. But that's what makes it so cool to me, and like why I'm proud of the business that I've like been able to create, or people that have helped me create. Really, I can't take credit for that. But it's been, there's a lot of stories like the one I just mentioned that I think fall into that category, because it's cool to see people that are already personal to you achieve those things.
Who are your role models, mentors that you always could go back to and give them a call and say, hey, this is what I'm going on. This is what's going on in my life, or real estate, or anything that you can speak to.
Yeah. My dad,
I love
it's
that.
probably an easy answer, but he's always been, someone that I think the way he views relationships and the impact he's had on people through his career. He was a teacher for 54 years at St. Bernard, and an English teacher, and the relationships he was able to create without even knowing it, I think, have always been inspiring to me. And he's somebody I can always, if there's a challenge that I have going on, I'm either thinking, what would he do? Or I'm calling him and saying, what would you do? And so fortunately he set me up, I think, with enough skills where I don't have to make those calls very often, but I give him a lot of credit. And, my broker, Bud Bowes, who runs our office as far as real estate goes, he's been huge. When I first started, I started on his team, which is, I think, the best way to start in real estate is to be on a team, because he just helped me lay a really strong foundation. And all the things I'm just talking about how, the business I wanted to create, as soon as I told him that, he did whatever he could to help me grow it. He was never pushing things on me and trying to push me in a direction I didn't already want to go. So by giving me freedom, he taught me a lot about how to grow a business. And there's others. There was a bartender too, like I mentioned, at the restaurant. And he kind of was like a big brother to me when I was there, and taught me a lot about. So there's tons of people that you meet. Cool. I feel like along your life that you end up, when someone asks you a question like that, you think back. You can have more mentors than I realized.
Right. I think I think mentorship is the number one. I think when I go to a team, when I go work for people, or the company that I was with previously, I had a really good mentor.
But Jen, right? I remember I saw that interview. That was great.
Jen, shout out to Jen Finan. She took me under her wing, and she really gave me an opportunity to develop into the insurance agent that I am today. And then I think, even to Rajay Davis, who was a mentor when I was 16 years old, that those type of people in your life, like you said, you can think about them, like you can go back and think, 4, 5, 6, there's a lot of them, but you don't really appreciate it until you actually sit down and think about who was in your life to help you be who you are today. And obviously your dad, the foundation that he built, I love that. That's one of the things that I try to build with. I'm going to always try one, because you can't build that, or actually, I guess I should say, your dad wouldn't have been able to do that unless he could do it himself, and be able to pass that down to you, and you're going to be able to pass down that to your kids. That's invaluable.
Right.
What is the most valuable lesson you've learned in your career?
Wow. Oh man. Most valuable lesson I've learned in my career. I would say probably how important networking is, and just being open to meeting new people and having new experiences is probably the most important thing that I pulled out of my career. I have a quote written on the whiteboard in my office that says, your formal education can make you a living, but your personal education can make you a fortune.
Wow.
And I thought that always resonated with me, because, I went through college. Like I said, I got a degree.
Right.
And that was great and served its purpose in its own way. But what I've learned in the field, in life, through just mistakes you made, or successes, or just seeing other people make mistakes or have successes, like, the most valuable thing I think is just, keeping yourself open to new experiences and meeting new people, and you never know what's going to lead you to. And I think that's really probably the best way to get the most out of life.
That's awesome. Listen, so we touched on today your transition from the real estate industry, from the restaurant industry to the real estate industry, and the skills that you developed there, and the ability, or the addiction, if you will, to earning money while being there, getting the tips and all that stuff. We touched on the comp changes and the change that the settlement brings to the industry, and what you think is going to happen, and how to navigate through it. we also touched base. We talked about the work-life balance, being a dad, your personal fulfillment, and we just wrapped up here with your mentors, Geoff. So before we let you go, where can people find Geoff Smith? Phone number, social media, anything like that?
Yeah. You want me to get my cell number? I'll get my cell number.
Up to you.
Yeah. I mean, hey, it's just know if I'm with my kids, I'm not going to answer it. But no, I'm just kidding. 860-912-3209 is my cell. I'm on, not on enough, but I have pages on Facebook and Instagram that I probably use the most out of anything. But I should be on there more. I'll be the first to say that.
Or not.
Not scrolling more, but maybe just connecting more. I think my Facebook is facebook.com/New County Homes, and Instagram should be the same. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, brother. I appreciate it, man.
Definitely.
Thanks.
Thank you.